First, at least 21 trucks have been torched in a matter of days. Our South African truck drivers have been very vocal about the employment of foreign nationals. So what does the law actually say about this? Well, let's unpack that. I'm joined by Labour lawyer Sandile July, who is joining us this evening. Sandile, very good evening to you, and I appreciate your time, Sandile. So let's just talk about this for a second. What does the law say? Because I had a conversation with two organizations this morning. One was the Road Freight Association. The other is a forum involved in this particular issue, saying that for many years they're saying that they don't want foreign nationals, legal or illegal, in the trucking industry. Good evening. What does the law say?
There are two pieces of legislation that regulates the employment of foreign people or foreigners. Firstly, you look at the Immigration Act. Under what circumstances do you get a work permit? Because you can't work in South Africa if you're a foreigner without a work permit. Now, you can only get that work permit if you possess critical skills. And now the question is, what is critical about driving a truck? So if they are here, and indeed they are foreigners, then they must have work permit. It would then be interesting, how did they get those permits when the driving of a truck is not a critical skill? Then you also have the Employment Services Act. That Employment Services Act has a purpose. And one of the purposes is that when we employ foreigners, the employment of those foreigners who have those critical skills, or whoever that we employ, it must not be adverse to the employee, to the people of South Africa. That act is very clear on that you can't employ people from outside if that employment will be adverse to the people of South Africa.
Even if they are a legal foreigner in our country, they've got all the documentation, they've got all the permits, they've got all the visas, whatever it might be. Despite all of that, there's still this regulation. Is my understanding correct?
Yeah, it depends. You remember, all visas, you are here for a purpose. If you're a permanent resident, you'll be a permanent resident. I would assume you'd be allowed to work. It has already transformed from work permit. But for you to get a work permit, the question is, are you foreigner? You are a foreigner, but what is your status in the country? It has nothing to do with you being legal or illegal. It has to do with whether you come into this country with a work permit. If you're not here to work, you don't have a work permit, you can't work. And you can only work also if you possess critical qualifications.
So let's talk about this sector then, because what you're saying is not untrue for many other countries, whether it's America, Australia, etc. They have a critical skills list. They have an essential skills list, where if you qualify, you qualify. If you don't, you don't. It's that simple in this case. Do we know within the road freight sector, within the logistics sector, is there like a sub requirement for the sector to employ foreign nationals? I'm trying to see, are there loopholes in the law that could be explored?
There are no loopholes, because the Immigration Act that regulates the critical skill, that you must possess critical skill, has got a list of what constitutes critical. I may not have it with me now, but there is a list of what constitutes critical skills. So, because they can't give you a permit if they don't have that list. They definitely have to have that list. And in terms of the act, the minister is supposed to come up with that list. And I have no doubt that that list does exist.
So, if I understand you correctly, Sandile, so the road freight industry and many of these trucking companies, by what you've explained, are they breaking the law? Are they essentially hiring foreign nationals illegally? Is that what I'm hearing from you?
If this, for me, these employees, there is no way that they would have received working permit if they are foreigners. There is no way that they would have received permit to come to South Africa to drive when we have so many drivers, people who have license. All what we require to drive is to have a license. And we have licensing department in South Africa.
When you now look at the action that's being taken against us, I'm not talking about the torching of trucks, but we do have various transport and freight forums who are fighting for exactly what you're explaining. They're saying this is illegal, there's been a committee involved, there's been a task team involved. Based on what you're saying, they could have a fair argument to say no foreign nationals. I see load shedding has just kicked in, a choice of load shedding here in South Africa. We haven't lost the signal, the lights have just gone out. Sandile, we're going to turn your camera off for a moment, but you and I are going to stay on the conversation. Welcome to Stage 6 Load Shedding South Africa. It's good fun. So Sandile, you're still with me audio-wise. So those who are against this, can they go to a labour court? Can they go to a high court? What would be the correct way of handling this if they believe foreign nationals are getting jobs they shouldn't be? What should they be doing? I wonder if we haven't lost Sandile's audio as well. I'm afraid you can see what it's like. It's Stage 6 power cuts at the moment. Thanks, Eskom. Appreciate that in the middle of an interview as well. You saw the lights go off, which means we've all been in a Zoom interview. The interview does die. What we're going to try and see is if we can't get Sandile back on, if we have time, just for a minute or two, just to finish up that conversation. So very, very clear from Labour lawyer Sandile July joining us that the fact is that there are regulations and laws in place that if there are positions available in South Africa's trucking sector where there are drivers required, you have to hire local first. We'll see if we can't get him back on in a couple of minutes from now.